70%. That is the protein concentration in a single microscopic organism, a living thing smaller than a grain of rice. More protein than beef, more protein than chicken, more than any supplement the $80 billion protein industry wants you to know about. 5 plants growing in ponds and water containers contain protein levels that make eggs look ordinary. And at the end of this video, you will know exactly how to grow a permanent protein supply in a bucket of water. Walk into any grocery store in America tonight. The supplement aisle stretches 30 feet long. Protein powder containers dominate the shelves. Tubs promise muscle growth, weight loss, and athletic performance. The labels show muscular athletes and lean physiques. What they do not show is the truth hiding in plain sight. The global protein supplements market reached nearly $30 billion in 2025. Industry projections show it climbing past $63 billion by 2033. That is not a typo. $63 billion for a nutrient that grows in ponds? Protein and amino acids represent the fastest growing ingredient segment at 12.5% compound annual growth rate. Every year, the industry expands while these 5 plants remain buried in obscurity. Animal-based supplements led the market with nearly 60% revenue share in 2025. This dominance did not happen by accident. It was built piece by piece, study by study, advertisement by advertisement. The foundation was laid in the early 20th century when meat and dairy industries established themselves as pillars of government food policy. They taught Western consumers a simple equation: protein equals meat. Meat equals strength. The message was elegant, it was memorable, it was profitable, and it was incomplete. Here is what those campaigns never mentioned. A Stanford University study found that 97% of all agricultural research and innovation spending went to animal farmers. Livestock farmers receive 1,200 times more public funding in Europe than meat alternative companies, 800 times more in the United States. Public money spent on plant-based protein research totaled just $42 million between 2014 and 2020. That represents just 0.1% of the $35 billion spent on meat and dairy during the same period. The funding disparity tells only part of the story. Industry lobbying shapes dietary recommendations themselves. One researcher described the situation bluntly: the power of the animal farming sector in the United States and Europe and the political influence they have is just gigantic. At this point in time, livestock feed alone utilizes almost 40% of the world's cropland. The infrastructure exists to maintain animal protein dominance, not because alternatives lack merit, but because alternatives lack investment. But here's what the protein industry never wanted you to understand. The plants they ignored did not just contain protein, they contain concentrations so high they make eggs look ordinary. And the first one might be growing in your grandmother's backyard right now. In tropical regions across Africa, Asia, and Central America, a tree grows that local populations have used for centuries. Western scientists largely ignored it until researchers began analyzing its nutritional content in the 1980s. The numbers changed everything scientists thought they knew about plant protein. Moringa oleifera, also known as the drumstick tree, the horseradish tree, and the miracle tree. It holds an unusual distinction. Nearly every part of this plant is edible. Leaves, seeds, pods, flowers, and roots all provide nutrition. And the leaves contain more protein than eggs by a significant margin. 100 grams of dried moringa leaves provide between 25 and 30% protein by weight. Compare that to eggs at 12.6% protein. The leaves contain all essential amino acids in proportions that meet the World Health Organization requirements. Researchers comparing moringa to other protein sources found it favorably compares to soybean in amino acid profile. Protein. But the protein content is only part of the story. Moringa provides 7 times more vitamin C than oranges, 10 times more vitamin A than carrots, 17 times more calcium than milk. Scientists analyzing its chemical composition described it as containing more protein than eggs while delivering a full punch of nutrients that few other foods can match. Nutrients. India alone accounts for approximately 80% of the world's moringa production. with an estimated 2.2 million tons of Moringa pods produced annually. The global Moringa products market was estimated at over $8 billion in 2023 and is projected to reach more than $15 billion by 2030. Yet Western consumers remain largely unaware of this resource. India produces 1.2 million tons of fruit from an area of just 38,000 hectares. The productivity is staggering when compared to conventional protein crops. In developing countries, Moringa has the potential to improve nutrition, boost food security, foster rural development, and support sustainable land care. Some 140 organizations worldwide have initiated Moringa cultivation programs to lessen malnutrition, purify water, and produce oils for cooking. The knowledge exists, the infrastructure is being built. The question is why Western consumers remain in the dark. Knowledge. The irony is staggering. Families in developed nations spend hundreds of dollars annually on protein supplements, while a tree that grows in poor soil with minimal water could provide superior nutrition. Moringa tolerates drought conditions that would kill most crops. It grows in containers on balconies and patios. Seeds germinate within 2 weeks. A single tree produces harvestable leaves within months. Irony, picture a suburban backyard in Arizona or Texas. The soil is dry and cracked. Summer temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Most vegetables wilt and die within days without constant irrigation. Yet a moringa tree thrives in these exact conditions. Its deep taproot finds moisture that other plants cannot reach. Its leaves continue producing protein through heat waves that destroy conventional gardens. A single mature tree yields several pounds of leaves each month. Dried and powdered, those leaves store for years without refrigeration. Thrives. The second plant on this list spent 2,000 years feeding Asian civilizations, yet almost no Western nutritionist has heard its name. Azolla, a tiny floating fern no larger than a fingernail. Chinese farmers have cultivated it in rice paddies since before the Han Dynasty. They discovered something remarkable about this humble plant. It manufactures protein from thin air. Azolla hosts a symbiotic cyanobacteria called Anabaena azolla within its leaf cavities. This microscopic partner performs nitrogen fixation. It captures atmospheric nitrogen and converts it into amino acids, the building blocks of protein. No fertilizer required, no soil needed, just water and sunlight. This symbiosis enables continuous atmospheric nitrogen capture, elevating Azolla's crude protein content to between 22% and 30% of its dry weight. Laboratory analysis found Azolla meal contained 74% organic matter and 22% crude protein. Beyond protein, Azolla provides essential amino acids including lysine and methionine. It delivers vitamin A, vitamin B12, iron, calcium, and zinc. The growth rate borders on astonishing. Azolla doubles its biomass every 3 to 5 days. A small starter culture becomes a harvestable crop within 2 weeks. Japanese farmer Takao Furuno developed an integrated farming system using Azolla with rice and ducks. His methods eliminated the need for synthetic fertilizers entirely. Azolla provided nitrogen for the rice while feeding the ducks. The ducks controlled pests while fertilizing the paddies. Growing Azolla requires almost no effort. The fern floats on any still water surface. A plastic container on a balcony becomes an Azolla farm. No pumps, no filters, no expertise. The plant multiplies regardless of human intervention. One handful today becomes a bucketful next month. The third plant might be growing in the pond down the street. Property owners call it green scum. They spray herbicides to kill it. They do not realize they are destroying one of nature's most efficient protein factories. Duckweed, the smallest flowering plant on Earth. Individual plants measure between 1 and 10 millimeters across. They float on ponds, ditches, and slow-moving streams across every continent except Antarctica, and they contain protein concentrations that rival soybeans. Duckweed species, particularly Wolffia and Lemna, are capable of producing up to 45% protein by dry weight and have demonstrated a well-balanced amino acid profile comparable to traditional legumes. For comparison, eggs contain 12.6% protein. Soybeans contain approximately 35%. Duckweed exceeds both. These aquatic plants offer significant economic benefits due to their high productivity, low input costs, and versatility in applications. They have exceptional growth rates and high biomass yields compared to traditional terrestrial crops. Duckweed can double its biomass in as little as 48 hours, providing a continuous and reliable source of protein-rich biomass. Research indicates that the biomass of duckweed can be harvested multiple times per week, resulting in an estimated annual yield of up to 30 tons per hectare, significantly higher than conventional crops like soybeans, which typically yield between 2.5 and 3 tons per hectare annually. The difference is extraordinary, 10 times more protein per hectare than the industry standard. The global duckweed protein market reached nearly $180 million in 2025 and is expected to reach nearly $345 million by 2033. Floatmeal Company, a startup headquartered in Hokkaido, Japan, hopes to promote duckweed as a solution to the global protein crisis. Wolfia's environmental impact is remarkably low, as it uses only 1/230th as much water and 1/63rd as much land compared to soybean cultivation. Southeast Asian cultures recognized duckweed's value centuries ago. In Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar, people harvest Wolfia species from ponds and canals. They call it water eggs. They add it to salads, omelets, soups, and curries. The practice continues today in rural communities across the region. Visit a morning market in Chiang Mai or Vientiane. Vendors display baskets of fresh greens harvested before dawn. Among the familiar vegetables sits something unusual, small containers filled with tiny green spheres floating in water. Local shoppers scoop handfuls into plastic bags without hesitation. They have eaten this plant their entire lives. Their grandparents ate it, their great-grandparents ate it. The tradition stretches back centuries. Meanwhile, tourists walk past without a second glance, unaware they are passing one of the most protein-dense foods on the planet. Duckweed grows faster than any other flowering plant. Scientists describe its reproduction as almost exponential. Under optimal conditions, a population doubles every 24 to 48 hours. A handful of plants becomes a dense mat covering an entire water surface within weeks. The cultivation requirements are minimal. Any container holding water supports duckweed growth. A 5-gallon bucket becomes a continuous protein supply. No soil, no complex nutrients, no daily maintenance. The plants harvest themselves through constant multiplication. Skim off the excess, eat it fresh, or dry it for storage. The remainder regenerates within days. The fourth plant multiplies so rapidly that scientists once considered it for emergency food production during wartime and for feeding astronauts on long space missions. Chlorella, a single-celled green alga invisible to the naked eye. Each cell measures between 2 and 10 micrometers in diameter. Millions fit in a single drop of water, and each cell contains more protein than almost any other food source ever analyzed. These chlorella products contain approximately 59% protein by dry weight. Some strains of Chlorella pyrenoidosa reach 57%. Chlorella vulgaris ranges from 51 to 58%. This protein content exceeds soybeans at 33% by a wide margin. The protein quality matches the quantity. According to the essential amino acid index used to evaluate protein for human nutrition, chlorella scores higher than soybean protein. It provides all essential amino acids in proportions your body can utilize efficiently. NASA researchers studied chlorella for closed-loop life support systems. The algae could convert astronaut waste into edible protein during long-duration space missions. The efficiency impressed scientists, and the simplicity appealed to engineers. A small photobioreactor could, in theory, feed a crew indefinitely. Home cultivation presents more challenges than the previous plants, but it remains achievable. Transparent containers in sunny locations support chlorella growth. The algae requires some mineral supplementation, but tolerates a wide range of conditions. Starter cultures are available online. Small-scale production systems fit on countertops and windowsills. The fifth plant holds the crown, 70% protein concentration, the highest measured in any commonly consumed organism, and civilizations cultivated it for centuries before modern science understood its value. Spirulina, a spiral-shaped cyanobacterium that forms in alkaline lakes across tropical and subtropical regions. In 1567, the International Association of Applied Microbiology labeled it a wonderful future food source. They documented protein content ranging from 50 to 70% by dry weight, more than 3 times higher than beef at 22%, more than 5 times higher than eggs at 12.6%. Ancient peoples recognized spirulina's power without understanding the science. The Aztec Empire harvested it from Lake Texcoco in central Mexico. They called it tecuitlatl and formed it into dried cakes for consumption. Spanish conquistadors recorded observing the harvest but showed no interest in replicating the practice. The knowledge nearly disappeared. Across the Atlantic, the Kanembu people around Lake Chad in Africa independently discovered the same resource. They call it dai. Women still harvest it today using traditional methods passed down through generations. They skim the blue-green growth from the lake surface, dry it in the sun, and sell it in local markets. Although East Africa's Rift Valley holds about 80 to 90% of the world's wild spirulina diversity, almost no one is farming it commercially there. Using Lake Natron's mineral-rich water, abundant sunlight, and heat, entrepreneurs can grow spirulina more affordably, sustainably, and in harmony with nature. One team became the first to farm spirulina commercially using water directly from the Flamingo Lakes, with early trials saving around 70% in nutrient costs. Spirulina is a high-demand, nutrient-dense microalgae used in human nutrition, animal feed, pharmaceuticals, and cosmetics. The profitability of spirulina is directly tied to global demand for plant-based proteins and sustainable food sources. The 2025 market outlook remains strong, with countries like the United States, Japan, and Germany continuing to drive demand for organic, traceable, and vegan-friendly supplements. In recent years, small-scale spirulina farming has become increasingly popular among individuals interested in sustainable living and self-sufficiency. Home cultivation systems are relatively simple, requiring only a transparent container, a mineral-rich growing medium, consistent light, and gentle aeration. These compact setups allow people to harvest their own fresh spirulina at home. Laboratory analysis confirms what these cultures knew intuitively. Spirulina delivers 60 to 70% protein by weight. It provides all essential amino acids. It contains B vitamins, iron, and antioxidants. 1 tablespoon of dried spirulina delivers 4 grams of protein with minimal calories. The calculation becomes striking when you compare it directly. Spirulina at 60 to 70% protein versus eggs at 12.6%. That is 5 to 6 times more protein by weight. The plant that holds the protein crown has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. Now here's the question that matters. Why did these plants remain buried while the protein supplement industry grew to $60 billion a year? The answer is not conspiracy. The answer is structure. Search PubMed, the database of medical research. Type the phrase animal protein nutrition. You will find tens of thousands of published studies. Type the phrase duckweed protein human nutrition. You will find a few hundred. The ratio reveals the disparity. This gap does not reflect scientific merit, it reflects funding sources. Animal protein studies receive industry sponsorship. Meat processors fund trials that support their products. Supplement companies invest in research that validates interventions they can patent and sell. Duckweed research receives almost no Western industry funding. The studies that exist come primarily from Asian universities, government research institutions, and development organizations. Consider the economic logic. Animal protein requires industrial processing, slaughter facilities, refrigerated shipping, processing plants, packaging lines, and quality control laboratories. The complexity creates barriers to entry. The barriers protect profit margins. Every step adds cost. Every cost adds markup. Every markup generates revenue. This is profit. Now consider duckweed. It floats on water. It harvests itself through multiplication. No processing facility is required. No patents are possible on a plant that grows freely. No extraction technology to license. A family with a pond can grow their own protein indefinitely. A crop that self-propagates cannot generate repeat seed sales. Monsanto makes no money from Azolla patches that multiply forever. A product requiring no processing cannot generate processing revenue. These plants threaten every link in the protein supply chain. This is not suppression, this is economics. Companies fund research supporting their products. They do not fund research that makes their products unnecessary. Universities pursue grants from available sources. The sources favor patentable interventions. A self-replicating plant cannot be patented. The funding flows elsewhere. The research follows the funding. The knowledge gaps persist. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter public consciousness. 3 generations of Westerners grew up without ever hearing the word Azolla, not because anyone hid it, because no one profited from revealing it. Integrating microalgae and duckweed into agricultural and food systems can significantly improve food security, nutritional outcomes, and sustainability. Microalgae can capture and sequester large amounts of carbon dioxide, significantly reducing the carbon footprint of protein production. The carbon sequestration potential of these plants helps offset emissions from other agricultural activities. The environmental case matches the nutritional case, yet the knowledge remains confined to academic journals. The scale of the current global hunger crisis is enormous. A staggering 318 million people were already facing crisis levels of hunger or worse in 2026, according to the World Food Programme Global Outlook. New analysis estimates that almost 45 million more people could fall into acute food insecurity if conflict in the Middle East does not end by the middle of the year and oil prices remain above $100 a barrel. More than 87 million people are facing hunger in East and Southern Africa, and 52 million are projected to be acutely food insecure in West and Central Africa by mid-2026. As the global population heads toward nearly 10 billion by 2050, global protein demand is projected to surge by 50%. The consequences for people and planet will be profound. The Food and Agriculture Organization projects that global meat production will need to rise by nearly 70% by 2050 to meet that demand. Demand drives research, and research follows funding. This path would strain land, water, and climate systems that the world's most vulnerable people depend on. The alternative protein market tells a different story. Valued at $21.5 billion in 2025, the market is projected to reach $80.4 billion by 2035, growing at 14.1% annually. Plant-based alternative proteins dominate with a 62% share, supported by scalable raw materials such as soy, pea, lentil, and duckweed. The same plants we have been discussing are finally entering the conversation, but the pace of adoption remains painfully slow compared to the scale of the crisis. Public budgets are being reallocated toward defense at the expense of social protection, nutrition, and climate adaptation. The United States defense budget will exceed $1 trillion for the first time in 2026, while non-defense discretionary spending faces 23% cuts. Oxfam analysis shows that less than 3% of G7 military spending could finance hunger eradication and meaningful debt relief. The priorities reveal themselves through budgets. Protein supplements receive billions in marketing. These 5 plants receive almost nothing. The contrast becomes vivid when you examine where money flows. A single Super Bowl advertisement costs $7 million for 30 seconds of airtime. Protein supplement companies purchase multiple slots each year. They sponsor athletes and fitness influencers. They fund studies at prestigious universities. They hire lobbyists to shape dietary guidelines. The machinery of persuasion operates at industrial scale. Meanwhile, a farmer in Bangladesh grows Azolla in irrigation ditches. A grandmother in Senegal harvests Moringa leaves for her grandchildren. A family in rural Thailand skims duckweed from their fish pond. These people possess knowledge that could transform global nutrition, but they lack marketing budgets. They lack lobbyists. They lack sponsored research. The asymmetry defines the modern food system. Solutions that generate profit receive amplification. Solutions that empower individuals receive silence. A protein powder that costs $50 per container gets prime shelf placement. A plant that grows for free in a bucket gets classified as pond scum. Consider what would happen if every household grew these 5 plants: Moringa in the garden, Azolla in a pond, Duckweed in a bucket, Chlorella on the windowsill, Spirulina in a small tank. The cumulative effect would devastate the protein supplement industry. $60 billion in annual sales would evaporate. Processing facilities would close. Marketing departments would shrink. Shareholders would suffer. From the industry perspective, your ignorance is not a problem. It is a business model. Every consumer who does not know about duckweed is a potential protein powder customer. Every gardener who sprays herbicide on pond scum will eventually buy supplements. The knowledge gap generates revenue. Closing that gap threatens profits. A recent study found that nearly 52% of girls and young women and 82.5% of boys and young men reported use of whey protein in powder or shake form. The study also shows that muscle-building supplements are highly used by male demographics due to the muscular socio-cultural male body ideal. Young people are spending money on products they believe they need. Meanwhile, nature provides alternatives they have never heard of. The population of the world is expected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, and the global demand for food is estimated to nearly double by that time. The math does not favor the current system. Animal protein cannot scale to meet that demand sustainably. But these 5 plants can. They require minimal land, they consume minimal water, they produce protein continuously without industrial intervention. Imagine a future where apartment balconies host spirulina tanks instead of decorative flowers, where suburban ponds produce duckweed instead of mosquitoes, where school cafeterias serve moringa smoothies instead of processed protein bars, where families harvest their own complete nutrition from containers they maintain with minimal effort. This future requires no technological breakthrough, no government program, no corporate initiative. The plants already exist. The knowledge already exists. The only missing element is awareness. And now you have it. You know that 5 plants contain protein concentrations far exceeding eggs. You know that moringa grows in poor soil and provides 25 to 30% protein. You know that Azolla fixes nitrogen from thin air and doubles every few days. You know that duckweed reaches 51% protein and Southeast Asians have eaten it for centuries. You know that chlorella impressed NASA scientists with its efficiency. You know that spirulina fed Aztec warriors and Kanembu fishermen and contains 70% protein. You know that buckets and ponds become permanent infrastructure for protein. You know that these plants multiply regardless of human intervention. You know that one small investment today provides nutrition for years. The protein industry will not tell you. The funding structures ensure the research stays buried. But the plants do not care about quarterly earnings or shareholder value. They care about photosynthesis, about multiplication, about filling whatever water you give them with protein. For thousands of years, these plants have pursued that single agenda. They will continue for thousands more. The only question is whether you will let them grow.